Who is that girl I see? Question, were you a child prodigy? Were you asked to make a Spanish album after your very first debut album? We're going to talk about Christina Aguilera and her Spanish album, Mi Reflejo. Now, a little backstory has to go into this because even with the name of this album, there's a lot to explain here. Now, Christina Aguilera was pretty much like a child prodigy growing up. She was known for like singing the national anthems at basketball games as a very tiny, tiny little girl. Like she's the little girl with the big voice. And everyone was telling her she needs to audition for Star Search. And she did. And she lost.
The tiebreaker, junior vocalist, either Christopher Eason or Christina Aguilera. Champion, once again, Christopher Eason.
But she got very, very close to winning by a very small margin. Someone beat her. And that led her to be cast in the Mickey Mouse Club. She had to wait a year because she was too young. But she was a sensation on the Mickey Mouse Club singing Whitney Houston songs. Sadly, Mickey Mouse Club did not turn out. And Christina Aguilera was back on the circuit, basically living her regular life until she got the bug again to sing. She was going around submitting her information everywhere. And as luck would have it, Disney was doing the movie Mulan. The soundtrack was being made, and there was a certain song, Reflection, that needed a girl singer to do a more contemporary spin on this song, so it's not just the one from the movie being released for the public. So they were in search for a girl with a very special voice because there's a very important note a girl has to hit on this. And I had to look up the note especially because like it's a very, very specific note. The note the girl would have to hit would be, hit a high E above an octave middle C in full voice. What the f does that mean? I had to ask my vocal teacher and he explained to me it's very, 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 very hard to hit this. As luck would have it, since Christina Aguilera already had ties to Disney to begin with from the Mickey Mouse Club, a producer had already thought of her right away and thought, you know what? I bet Christina could do it. So he called Christina up, and as the story goes, she shouted at her mom on the phone, "Mom, can I hit a high C above the octave middle C in full voice?" And she's like, "Yeah, you can." So they found the song, "I Want to Run to You" by Whitney Houston. Christina recorded it, and she booked the job.
You know, I'm singing to the song or whatever, and I hit the note. We send it in. They offer to fly me out.
And as far as this note goes on the Mulan soundtrack, I have to say, like, I've heard it, and I've heard it on other songs, and, like, I'm really impressed that, like, it's a really hard note to hit. But when you listen to it, it's just like, what was the big deal about? I guess, like, I'm not a singer like that, but yeah, hearing it, I was just like, okay. It's probably because it's not the showiest note. It's just really, really hard to hit. Also, huge sidebar. Can we just take a moment to talk about this fit on Christina Aguilera and the Reflections video? Like, what is this? Like, it looks like she works at a credit union, and this short cropped Rachel hair from Friends, I can't. It's everything. Reflection was a minor hit, but it also led to a part of the history a lot of people often overlook. Like I mentioned before in the Britney clones, I don't count Christina Aguilera as a Britney clone because if you're looking at the timeline here, Christina Aguilera came out first. By just a few months, Christina released Reflection in June. Britney Spears debuted with Baby One More Time in September. So Christina Aguilera came out first. Now, Christina Aguilera would go on to release her solo album, her debut album, and it was a gigantic hit. And they wanted a follow-up, but Christina Aguilera had a different idea in mind. She wanted to bring attention to her Ecuadorian roots, and she wanted to pay homage to that. So the album Mi Reflejo was put into production. Now, when I tell you this was not the original title to this album, let me tell you the original workshop title for this album because it cracked me up when I read this. Apparently, they were going to call this album Latin Girl Lover. What? Bear in mind, Christina Aguilera is like a teenager. Like, what the who suggested this? I must know. So other than this very problematic title for her album, which was obviously scrapped for the more appropriate Mi Reflejo, they sourced Rudy Perez, who is a fantastic Cuban producer who's made hits for so many Latin artists. And he was given the task of doing this album for Christina Aguilera and producing it. Now, there was one major problem. Christina Aguilera doesn't speak Spanish. But cleverly, Rudy actually disguised this really, really well. His method of doing this was, okay, so according to an interview with Rudy Perez, he said that Christina Aguilera did not know any Spanish while recording. He remedied the problem by phonetically writing out lyrics that included a system that allowed Aguilera to pronounce the R's in the songs. And, like, they were not playing any games with this album, okay? Like, they were full-on covers of standard Spanish songs. Like, she recorded boleros, there was a duet with Luis Fonsi, and she insisted on recording with him because she felt like they grew up listening to the same things and could really vibe on the song. Like, my favorite song has to be Pero Me Acuerdo de Ti. Like, it is so beautiful. And like, there were also different songs she had made for the album that were actually original tracks, like Falsas Esperanzas. That was an up-tempo salsa song, and it's really good. Like, it wasn't just a bunch of ballads or a bunch of just re-recordings in Spanish. Like, there was some thought put into this. Now, a lot of critics dismissed this album as sort of a soulless cash grab because there were a few of her songs from her original album that were re-recorded in Spanish, almost to the literal fact. Like, all the lyrics are exactly as they are in English, just they're Spanish now. But there are a lot of standards put on this album, and a lot of really surprising duets with like classic singers that really added like a level of prestige to this album, not to mention the production value that went into it. Let me explain. With Christina Aguilera's first album, the huge push and pull she had was that she really wanted to like really belt and go for it on songs, and she felt so limited and so like cloistered by the pressures they're putting on her to make a standard pop album that people can sing along to. Because a lot of the problems and a lot of criticisms Christina Aguilera often got, especially in her later albums, is that, yeah, she's a great singer, but you can't really sing along with a lot of it. Like, who wants to like sit there and try and hit out all these riffs and runs that they can't actually humanly do? But Christina can, and it's very impressive. But for the first album, they wanted nothing but a standard pop line. But they allowed her to kind of cut loose on the Spanish album. And when you listen to it, they didn't care what she was doing. Like, she was going for it. And some of these songs really, really hit. And it definitely resonated with her target audience because this album was a gigantic success. We're talking it broke records, okay? At this point, it is 6 times platinum. And also, Christina Aguilera won Latin Grammys for it. It really hit the mark for establishing Christina Aguilera as a formidable Latin artist. And unfortunately, despite all the success, like, Christina Aguilera wouldn't dabble in Spanish music until many years later. And it's almost a shame because, like, people were waiting for it. And literally, her fans had to wait until 2022 for her finally to release another album in Spanish. And it's crazy when you consider, like, people were waiting for this because her voice in Spanish sounds so beautiful. Now, not to be confused, she has released singles here and there with other Spanish artists, but never a full album. This is the only time she's ever done that in years. So, it was a huge deal that this happened. But I wanted to reflect on this because, again, like, it's really cool to, like, think about this, like, because what seemed like a soulless cash grab actually has a lot of soul and touched a lot of people and created a whole new fan base for Christina Aguilera that none of the other girls in the whole Britney market could really claim. Now, if you haven't heard the album Mi Reflejo, please check it out. It is an awesome album. And if you are a fighter, please let me know down below what you thought about this album. Did it have a chokehold on you like it did me? Because it's a great album. Like, me and Ernie used to listen to this all the time we drove back and forth to Palm Springs. Like, it was always when we plugged in because it's good. All right, there's some great tracks on this. And even the Spanish translations of her pop songs, they work really well in Spanish too. Like, a lot of the criticisms they said about her, like, it kind of seemed like just snobbery. Like, people were upset that she was trying to dabble in something they didn't think she belonged in. Now, I hope you guys enjoyed this. It's just James, okay? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, bye! Well, it's over now. Click my next YouTube video. Like, comment, and subscribe.